I'm going to sing a song here before I speak. In 1972, we went to Gordon, Nebraska, and the American Indian movement did. We went there to bring some sense of justice to a family that called us there. Their son, Raymond Yellowthaner, had been beaten to death in Gordon, Nebraska. The coroner listed his death as exposure, but we felt, and from the rumors, that Raymond had been beaten to death, and so we went to a judge and had the body brought back up for a closer examination. And upon examination, there was heavy marks, indentations on his head, and tire iron. It was a tire iron that made those marks on the back of his head. He had been, in fact, beaten to death. And as we were lowering Raymond back into the earth, a young Cheyenne man began to sing the song, and this song became the American Indian Movement song. In the last 5 or 6 days, there's been a lot of news that's been going on about Drake University. And sitting way up there in northern Minnesota, I live 100 miles from the Canadian border. And the only news I get is going on the internet. I don't go on the internet, my daughter does. So she sets all this stuff for me. I said, I want to know what's going on out there. And a lot of information about the protesting of the war and going on some Iowa National Guard property, being arrested, and then some information about the Justice Department trying to subpoena these witnesses and trying to find out about the meetings that were going on, which led to the nonviolent sit-in, the civil disobedience. It began to remind me of what was going on in this country in the 60s. And there was very few victories then because there was a lot of protests going on against the war in Vietnam. And now I see a pattern that is going to start all over again. But I felt good that somewhere in this country, see, as somebody of my age began to wonder what happened to protests. Did it all die in the 60s and 70s and 80s? What happened to it? You know, we were dragged into a war in Vietnam, and our sons and daughters were going off to die in some world we didn't know of. And what happened to this feeling of protest? What happened to it? And so when it started, this little bitty Drake University started to appear on the internet, I began to like if I could zoom in on it, I would have. How do I get more information about it? And then, of course, I said, I'm speaking there. I looked at my calendar and I said, oh my God, I'm going down there. I'm going down there towards being born again. Like America is being born all over again. And then I looked at the paper this morning and I saw this. Made me feel good. Made me feel that justice, somewhere in this country is going to be served. But we got to fight for it. We got to stand up for it. We got to kneel down for it. We got to lay down for it. We got to be wherever there's injustice. We've got to be in their face all the time, not part of the time. So I applaud those people from Drake who went forward. I applaud the university. I know they took a stand. They felt uneasy about turning over records and minutes and stuff like that. They should. No matter who's calling for them. In 1968, the FBI was calling for the membership, the list of members of the American Indian movement, and we said, no, you can't have that. That's ours. Just like this land is ours. So the FBI and the Justice Department should understand all the time, that wherever injustice is at, that we've got to be there. Whether we're grandparents, grandchildren, whether we're cooks, laborers, or students, or teachers, we've got to be there. And so that the next generation, or 7 generations down from now, they'll look back and say, what did Drake do about this? Did anybody stand up? There was, when they voted for the war powers, giving war powers to the President Bush. I never voted for this guy, by the way. And I think the only people that voted for him was the Supreme Court of the United States. They're the only ones that put him in. But somewhere they're going to, 7 generations from now, they'll read that somebody stood up and began a whole new movement. And I called Minnesota this morning, and the people are talking about this. And the American Indian movement is talking about it. And people concerned about all the bombings that are still going on and killing U.S. soldiers, U.S. citizens, people, killing people, are concerned about it. So yes, Drake, I applaud you today. And I asked what it meant. What did this Veritas, what did it mean? And she said, it means the truth. And that's what is happening. Truth is what is happening here. And when you go to the spirit world, 100 years from now or 50 years from now, they'll say that they stood up. That they stood the ground. Not on your shift. It didn't happen. You didn't let it go. See, you took on the whole, you thought maybe protesting, but they're trying to use homeland security against you. To subpoena the records of meetings of students and teachers who are meeting. They want that. You've got to say no. all the time. If they want to know who's there, let them come to the meeting. Let them understand what the meeting's about. Don't let them rob you of this right. The right to protest must always be, second to none, the right to stand up and say something is wrong here. We should be able to stand up and not fear a jail sentence for standing up. In 1973, after being in trial for nine and a half months, I was facing 250 years in prison. But I couldn't allow that to deter what I wanted to say. And the judge kept telling me to keep quiet, and I said, "No, Your Honor, I cannot be quiet. Our people have been quiet for hundreds of years, been beaten. And I can't take that path." In 1973, along with the 250 years, facing a life sentence for standing up at Wounded Knee, South Dakota, for daring to take a stand against the might of this country. 300 FBI agents surrounded us, 90 U.S. Marshals, members of the 82nd Airborne Division, trying to bring us to our knees. And we said, "No, not on our shift. You're not going to do it. We've been on our knees for too long. We've been there. You've beaten us down to there. But no, now you gotta go beyond that." And the judge, Judge Nichols, who I thought was very racist at the time, for 9.5 months, he presided over a trial that was to determine whether we were going to go to prison for the rest of our life and 250 years. He presided. He saw the misconduct of the government. Day after day that the prosecution was lying to this judge. Day after day, FBI agents were lying in their testimony. And he threatened them with perjury charges. But they paraded witness after witness against us. But the misconduct was too heavy for this federal judge. And after 9.5 months, hearing all the testimony of all the Army against us, the FBI agents, U.S. Marshals, hearing over 50, 60 witnesses come before and say, yes, they are criminals, the judge took the stand on the final day and he said, "They may not like what I'm going to say." He said, "I used to be proud of this country. Behind me is this American flag." He said, "I was a commander in the U.S. Navy. I was proud to be an American. But after seeing today and the 9-month trial with the government, he said, I didn't know how low they would stoop to gain a conviction. Now I know." He said, "I'm therefore dismissing." Of course, the courtroom broke out in cheers. And even above the screams and yelling and tears and joyous feelings, he's saying, "I'm dismissing the charges against these men." Dismissing. He said, "I was proud to be an American, but today I'm ashamed. I'm ashamed to be an American." And these men, he pointed to the government, these men have polluted the waters of justice, and dismissal is the only cure. That was in 1974. So today, I feel good the question that I raised just minutes ago, what happened to those feelings of protest? What happened to them when farmers and students and teachers and parents and grandparents were walking the streets protesting injustices, protesting against the wars they were dragging our people into? What happened to them? I thought those feelings had died in this country. And I've watched the political scene go from bad to worse. Bush president, and then another Bush president, then the Supreme Court ruling in favor of Bush. So I retired going north as far as I could go. I wanted to get away from it. And today, I'm coming back. This is my first stop. To come back, and to me, I feel very honored that to be in the presence of this historic time for those people who read the paper as I did, and saying that we're going to survive. We'll survive even under rotten conditions. We're going to survive. I applaud them. You know why I felt good? Because the Justice Department knew, they should have known, nobody in America would convict. Nobody in America would convict these people who made that stand. I don't know their names. I should know their names. But if they're in the audience, I applaud them. And so, the American Indian movement, still active, still going on, still going strong in Minnesota, South Dakota. A trial just finished in South Dakota where the FBI, again, maneuvering and paying people to come up and offer testimony. Paying people. See, they can't find the evidence, so they have to pay people. They have to manufacture it and get that out. Paint the picture again about the American Indian movement. Get them on the Homeland Security list as a terrorist organization. I've been to prison many times. I'm not afraid of a prison sentence. I thought that was required duty. Been to prison so many times, I thought maybe we're supposed to do this. I don't know. But of course it's not. I can joke about it, but of course it's not. It shouldn't be. It shouldn't have to be that way. But the American Indian movement began because of police brutality. It began because of the slum conditions that we were forced to live in some of the cities like Minneapolis and Chicago and San Francisco. These were relocation cities. But we couldn't find decent homes. So we had to go to the slum houses, stay there, raise families there. And then 1968, the beatings began to hurt. And I, for one, beaten almost to a pulp inside of an elevator. Stood up, blood gushing down, and I said, there's no more. And I couldn't fight the guy, but I tried to. And I knew I was going to get beat, but I said, no more. And when I got out, I went going door to door, knocking, asking people to come to this meeting. Please come. We've got to say something. We've got to do something. And I thought maybe 40 or 50 people would come to the meeting. Scheduled to start at 8 o'clock, and so I went out and bought some donuts, maybe 2 donuts and 2 dozen donuts and some coffee, and made coffee for about 50 people. We borrowed a little coffee pot. But by 6 o'clock that evening, about half, as there are in here, was at the meeting. And by 7, like this, filled up. And 8 o'clock came, they were out there. We had to move, we had to get extra chairs, we had to get a speaker, push the speaker out there. People were tired. And not just Native people. People of many races came to that meeting and joined with us. That it was time to stand up, time to get on with real living. And so the American Indian movement embarked on a journey, not knowing we were setting ourselves in a collision course with this government, with the FBI. I also didn't know how far they would stoop to try and crush the movement. But they tried at Wounded Knee. And many people who joined the American Indian movement, many were killed along the way. In 1972, 73, and 74, 65 members of the American Indian movement were gunned down and killed in South Dakota. Only in South Dakota, not counting the people who were beaten in other jails across this country. But that's where they knew we were the most vulnerable, and that's where they came after us. Put the leaders in jail, tie them up in the courtroom, and they threatened our people with long jail terms if they misbehaved, if they followed the path of the movement. But those people who, in my mind, are warriors today, the real warriors of the American Indian movement who stood up. And we're still active after many years. After many jail terms, we're still American Indian movement. After many beatings, we're still AIM. Leonard Peltier still remains in prison after 28 years. The government couldn't prove that Peltier shot those agents. They asked us then, tell us who shot them. Who killed the agents? But that will never be an issue that we have to face. It will never be a question that we have to answer. It was the FBI who came after us. It was they who brought the guns. And after 20 years, they admitted that yes, they were in fact feeding the opposition to the American Indian movement. They were feeding them guns and weapons and ammunition and money to destroy the American Indian movement. They're the ones that came after us at Wounded Knee. Wounded Knee sits in the middle of the reservation. And we said, you can't come here anymore. But they came and surrounded us. They surrounded us at Oglala. They're the ones that came in force. They're the ones who had the armored personnel carriers. They came after us. They declared war on the American Indian movement. It was war. And warriors, tired of the beatings, fired back. It's not a way of life that we should have to go into. It's not a way of life that we should advocate. It's not a way of life that we have to live. But I know when they push you and push you to the point that you can't back up any further, then something is going to happen. In 1968, when the American Indian Movement was formed, we were against the wall. Our backs were against the wall, and we had to do something. There was too many beatings, too many slum homes that we had to live in. Unemployment lines, prisons were being filled. 50-60% of the population of prisons in Minnesota and South Dakota were Native people. I was in those prisons. But I came out saying, that kind of life for me is no more. I've got to be Anishinaabe. I have to be Buganagijic. I have to be what my people are. And so the path for the American Indian Movement was laid down. No drugs, no alcohol. Get rid of it. And so that was the path we built. That was the path we chose to follow. So, the students of today, you have awesome responsibilities. I met some young people today in a class, and I could see that's my future is in their hands as well. And they were black, they were white. My future is in their hands as well. Someday, one of them, they might be in positions of power. One day they might stand up and say, there'll be no more of this. No more handing out indictments. No more threatening people with subpoenas. And no more trying to shut down universities because they come to meet and discuss and debate. You know, that fits the description of the House of Un-American Activities of the 50s. The same thing, what they're trying to do. They tried to go after people because they didn't want to believe in the U.S. system anymore. They wanted to believe in something else. And the government went after them. House of Un-American Activities. If anything is un-American, it is the subpoena. It is the threatening of students, threatening them to go to jail, arresting them for protest. Protest was how the U.S. government was formed, protesting against the injustice of Great Britain, against the Crown, saying, no, we can't live that way. We're over here and you're there. A protest should be one of the first things that we teach our young. And in many ways, our children, if they don't like something, they tell us right away. My grandchildren, if they don't like the way I do things, they'll tell me right away. But Grandpa, we don't like it that way. We don't want to go to this movie, we want to go to that movie. So they tell me right away. So protest, is born. Why can't we then protest against things that we believe to be immoral, illegal, and wrong? Illegal and wrong sometimes are over here and over here. But we're saying, if it's wrong, it's not right. the government says it might be legal, and so it makes it right for them, but it doesn't. So I also applaud Drake University and is it Vibs or Bibs for inviting me to speak. That's a very daring move, you know. FBI is going to say, wow, we've got to look at them guys real close. I'm glad you can laugh at that. Howard Batalba has been doing a good job for Native community here for a long time. And I want to say thank you for Howard for doing such a good job all these years. Also, Jennifer Hunt, a friend that I met last year at the powwow here. She's in the audience over here. Jennifer, thank you for doing what you're doing. I met the guy from India, what's his name? Satro? Where's he at? Satro's right there. I just met him back here. He said, you know, I'm Indian. He said, I am Indian. I said, really? Where at? Where from? He said, India. I said, you're right. But sometimes we make joke of that, and because Columbus was looking for a shorter route to India, landed here, thought he was in India, so now they call us Indians. And the joke that we make about it is that we're glad that he was not looking for a shorter route to Turkey. Otherwise, the announcements will be reading different today. Dennis Banks of the American Turkey Movement is here today. People that would come up to me on the streets would say, do you know I'm part Turkey? See, the whole Cleveland Indians would be the Cleveland Turkeys. So, I'm glad I can laugh about that too. I want to just say a few more things about protest. And it should be in our blood. It has to be. You've got to teach your students, those teachers in this room here. You've got to support that whole concept of protest. And stand by. We've got to stand by our young people that are doing this. We've got to stand by our seniors that are doing it. And we can't let them go to jail. We can't let them spend one day in jail for standing up. And those of you who do decide to take that one step, what is called civil disobedience, I applaud you. And sometimes it's going to get a little scary because you're up against people with weapons, mace, guns, shields, law, badges. That's what you're going to be up against. Then you're going to end up in jail for the night. So it's not going to be easy. And you might think you're all alone sometimes. But you're not. You're not alone. Just like I was checking in, find out what's going on, and I started to read about Drake, where I'm going. What Drake University? I never heard of anything going on in Drake. I never heard of anything going on in Iowa. Well, there was a trial. We had a major trial here back in the 70s, but where I know Interstate 35 goes right through Iowa, one way, and the other way, 80 goes through. That's all I know about Iowa. But now I know different. Now young people in Minnesota, and I don't know where else, are reading this same thing. They're looking at the internet, they're chatting, what's going on there? They're talking about Drake University. So yes, I'll be very honored. I will look upon this day as an honor for me to be amongst you. So there'll probably be more to this story. But you've got to stand, you've got to get that, what is that Homeland Security? What is it all about? Let's look at that. Let's pull it into our classrooms and discuss it. Item by item. When they discuss budgets, they go line item by line item. So let's discuss them by line item, and let's tear out the ones we don't like, and then send it back, whatever is left. Say, this is what we think of it. Do this one. So that's all I'm going to say about that. And I'm going to wanted to say a little bit about gaming. The whole scene, gambling, gaming on native reservations. First of all, the negative part about it is that in the beginning when the Supreme Court ruled that we had in fact a right to do bingo, we had a right to start out with tobacco, a right to selling cigarettes and bingo. And the Supreme Court ruled that we had a right, in fact, a right to sell tobacco on our own lands, but that we also had a right to develop casino, or the bingo, and they termed the Class C or Class 3 gaming operations. They went beyond what the original judgment was about, and they said we in fact have a right to develop gaming operations. So now we have, I always say that the Catholics are pretty angry at us because we stole their main, their bingo games, and they're probably just, all the millions of dollars that they've lost. But what we've done is we've perfected a little bit about gaming, about bingo, and it's very lucrative. And in the beginning, when there was no money for us to build casinos, money was sought wherever we could find it. Unfortunately, and I say unfortunately, we found money from Las Vegas. And Las Vegas is always linked to the mob. There's no question in my mind that it was not intentional to look for mob money, but money came to us. And of course, once the realization came that this was laundered money, then we began to buy back those contracts at a hefty price. But that was in 5 years in the making when gaming started in this country. In the first 5 years, it was full of that kind of shenanigans. But now, I believe I can say 100% of our casinos are run by us, controlled by us. There might be one or two that still owe contracts to different, not mob money, but to big investors. But the monies now are being, or the casinos are now being controlled by tribes themselves. On the plus side, there's been a lot of the infrastructure of native communities has been built up where there was There was no roads before, and 20, 30 years ago. Now you find paved roads. Where a lot of communities where there was outhouses, now you find homes being built in those areas. There are still a lot of tribes that have no casinos, and they're still in a very, very poverty-stricken. There's still those tribes like that. So not everybody, not every tribe, has those casinos. Our tribe has 3 casinos in northern Minnesota. And it kicks over money, and it rolls over and rolls over in our community. But not a lot of people come there. There are stories in California, Mashantucket, Pequot, and by Minneapolis, where some of the tribes are benefiting greatly by that. But in this windfall of cash, we have built a couple of hundred hospitals with our money. We have built high schools across this country. We're building grade schools, elementary schools, daycare centers. We're building them. Community centers. Even on our reservation, community centers and daycare centers we make sure that they're kind of together. We build for that. And we're still going to protect our fishing rights in northern Minnesota. We still have to, the state of Minnesota always wants to have control, jurisdiction over our lands. And we say no, not anymore. So the monies are going to, for educational purposes. We send hundreds of students on to higher education from high schools every year. Not 200 or 300, but we're in the thousands of graduating students. So good is coming from this decision by the Supreme Court that we can have gaming. So it is being used. We employ in our 3 counties, we're the largest employer. Before, we were the largest group of people on welfare. On the first of the month, we flooded the welfare offices, trying to get more clothing orders, trying to get more grocery orders, trying to get more food stamps. Now we, the Ojibwe people in Leech Lake Band, we're the largest employer. We employ over 3,000 whites. And many times we look at it now, they wouldn't employ us or our children. But we're employing them. Nothing racist about us. Especially when their parents come and spend all their money. I call it white welfare. But we've been doing good. We've been doing good with that. The American Indian movement is still, sometimes we're a thorn in some of the tribal council's side because we still demand that they stand up, against the county governments, against the state governments, against the federal government. Stand once in a while, we tell them. It's not all about gaming. And some of them just think about gaming. I've been back in this one area, and luckily we're able to work around gaming monies. And my friend Rich, who is here in the audience, Rich and I came down from northern Minnesota, able to build programs, building programs to help young people. The dropout rate for Native students is still extremely high, very high. And after the 10th grade, we lose probably 90% of those students that have been in there from kindergarten. Last May, I was asked at the last literally 5 minutes before graduation ceremony was going on, I was asked to be the speaker. And I'm talking to the principal as we're walking into the arena, into the auditorium. I said, how many students are we talking about? How many are graduating? He said, 8. And it kind of shook me up a little bit. 8 graduating students. How many are in kindergarten now? There's 40, there was 42 at the time. So that means 40 students started. 12 years later, 8 of them are finishing. I now sit on a federal committee that oversees the school that where my grandchildren are going to. And I traveled to Japan. I traveled there for business, but I traveled to go see their educational system. I went to Canada. How are they doing it up there? And this is the plan that we've come up with, is that we want to extend the school week by 1 day so that our children in school on Saturday. We also want to extend the school year to include June and July, so that they're in school then, or that they're only out of school then for August. Because we believe, or I believe in a way, that the 3 months that they're out of school is that they began to forget a lot of what the teachers who worked so hard to teach them, that they forget a lot of that stuff. And another reason is, I have a selfish reason for this, because the language of the Ojibwe people is coming back. Gone are those policies that the government had, trying to destroy the language, the arts, the music, trying to destroy all of that and our spiritual beliefs. Sweat Lodge is coming back, the pipe is coming back, the drum is coming back, songs are coming back, the ceremonies, all on the rise. And we have this year, beginning this year, we have what they call a total immersion in the Ojibwe language for our students, starting with kindergarten, so that grade 12, when they do graduate, or rather, let me get back, we want to accelerate what is required to graduate, what is required for high school graduation. And by keeping them in school another day and 2 more months, we want to accelerate everything so that they graduate from the 10th grade. And then we won't lose them. We've also went to the junior college and nearby, asked them if they would start preparing our high school graduates, if this plan comes about, start taking the young ones who graduate from high school and start preparing them for college. Can we do that? And yes, we can. So we're trying to do it. We're trying in many ways to keep our kids in school. And we need them. We need them to come back to us as lawyers. We need them to come back to us as physicians, cleric, computer experts. I don't know anything about computers. That's why my daughter comes. I can turn it on, turn it off, type a letter, print it, and that's it. I don't know anything else about it, what's inside there. But I know on the internet there's information in there. How do I get it out? She's teaching me that. So I'm typing in one letter at a time. Drake, D-R-A-K-E. Search for Drake, and all these ducks pop up. I said, what's the Drake? It's a duck. We're trying to keep our kids in school. We don't want to be pushed out by boredom. And also, in the audience is my old friend Bud, and Bud Murphy and his wife Ruth, longtime friends. So put your hat back on. All right. Was it? I told him I'd be talking to him. If he falls asleep during my speech, I can fall asleep when he talks. Because I'm known for power naps. I can take several of them. When I was on trial for 9 months, I used to take 3 or 4 of them during the day. And I used to wear these sunglasses inside the courtroom. And the judge would go, like that, and I'd looking. Say, I appreciate if the defendants stay awake during this trial. It's your trial, you know. And I acted as my own attorney in that trial. And I almost got sent to jail the very first day because I was accusing the judge of interfering. And he said, I'll interfere. This is my courtroom. And then I said, well, I kept on talking, and he ordered me to shut up. Keep quiet. He said, sit down. But I wouldn't sit down, and he had the marshals come over and grab me. And well, I sat down, but I was still talking. And he said he was going to put a gag order on me. He was going to gag me. I thought, well, maybe I'll let it go this time. But I was on trial in South Dakota. Then on the at Custer, South Dakota, there was a man who was also killed. His name was Wesley Badheart Bull, and he was killed by Darrell Schmidt. Darrell and Wesley had been friends all their life, and Wesley was good at pool, and he beat Darrell the night before in front of all of Darrell's friends, and he couldn't take it. They started fighting, and Wesley beat him, but just beat him and then left. The next day, Darrell came in and he said he was going to kill an Indian that night. And when Wesley came, they got into a fight. Darrell stabbed him, and he died on the way to the hospital. We tried to get the man tried for manslaughter or murder, but the district attorney said, state's attorney said it was a barroom brawl. And a lot of fighting took place right there in the courtroom. And I was arrested and I was tried by a man by the name of William Janklow, who was the Attorney General for the state of South Dakota. And earlier, about 3 years earlier, I was a tribal attorney at Rosebud, and I tried this man for attempted rape and for conduct unbecoming an officer of the court. And he was convicted, and there was a warrant issued for his arrest in the rape charge, and he was disbarred from Rosebud Reservation. He then became the governor after that. He became governor on an anti-AIM campaign. And he told me one time, you commit a crime in this state, Banks, and you're going to prison. I remember that. It stuck with me for many years. He also said, if you put a bullet in the AIM leader's head, he didn't say this to me, he said it to the press. If you put a bullet in the AIM leader's head, they won't bother you anymore. And based upon that statement, when I was to be sentenced to prison, I left. I went underground, and I went to California, where I was arrested. And Governor Brown, then Governor Brown, denied extradition. And I stayed in California for 8 years. I went to school out there, and I became a chancellor of a university out there. And then I came back, and I went, after the climate in South Dakota kind of cooled down, I went back down there. And I went to prison for 3 years and got out. And since then, the judge who sentenced me, his name is Judge Young, him and I have become good friends. The man who chased me for 12 years, who tracked me, D. Glasgow, the sheriff, him and I have become close friends. but I could not bring myself to even talk to this man who prosecuted me in the cluster cases. That was Bill Janklow. And in August of last year, this man killed another man in South Dakota. He ran into him. The man was on his motorcycle, and he killed him. And they asked me, what do I think about the case? What do I think should happen? I said, well, Janklow told me once, if you commit a crime in this country, in this state, you're going to prison. So I think he should go to prison. Last week, or Monday, it was Friday or Monday, he was sentenced to 100 days for killing this man. 100 days. South Dakota is still that kind of a state. So we're meeting next week. We're meeting with some members of the family, and we're going to more than likely issue a statement asking people to stay out of South Dakota and to stay away as a protest. And that's all we can do. The whole justice, the judges or people that he assigned when he was governor, and still the good old boy system over there. And he had laid it out against the American Indian movement, and we took it. We did battle with him, went to prison, came out, and but in the end he killed a person. He has to live with that. And that's the kind of person. He was elected to the United States Congress, by the way, as a legislator. So well, I'm not going to speak all night, so I wanted to make one announcement that the life story of Dennis Banks is being published March 24th. And it'll be on a stand by April 8th. That's what they're telling us. And I'll be touring in California, and a lot of book stops and bookstores, rather. But I'm going to talk about this. I'm taking this paper with me. And to say that maybe that protest movement, maybe we thought it died when we all became seniors. Maybe it died, but out at Drake University, in this small little university in the Midwest, in Iowa, someplace in Iowa, that's not a dream. That's a belief, and that they stand by them. So I will talk proudly of what happened here, because that's the way I think you should be remembered. And to all my friends, thank you for staying with us. I'm, probably will do court some other time again. I'm not worried about it. Be my own attorney, and. But if you ever get a chance to, as Vib said, we harvest our own wild rice in northern Minnesota. We do that. Our family still does that. We make drums. I didn't make that one. We make drums. If you want to learn how to do that, we make canoes. We teach how to make canoes from birch bark. If you ever want to learn how to do that, I want you to come up and say, where's Dennis Banks? Where does he live? Don't wear any kind of clothes that might make you look like a Fed, though. Kind of rough yourself up a little bit, So, I thank my staff. Rich, wave a hand there, Rich. There he is right there. We're opening up on his ranch this summer. I hope a big horse ranch. If you want to learn how to make, we're going to have a big teepee village up there. Howard and Craig are coming up. They're going to help us out up there. So if you want to pitch in and help us, or want to live with us for a while, bring your sleeping bag, bring your girlfriend, your boyfriend, come on up, be with us for a while. And if you're really from India, I will announce myself as I am Anishinaabe from now on. So I'm not a turkey. Thank you very much.
Dennis and I and Rich were in our hotel room last night, and I was talking to Dennis, and I said, you know, whenever you come somewhere, I said, satellite links start hooking up and computers start kicking on in Washington and in NASA. And we started laughing, but it's the truth. Also, Rich can contest that, you know, I asked him, how do you do it? How do you go all these places? How do you get, you know, the energy? And Rich will tell you, about a mile outside of their home, Dennis falls asleep and probably gets more sleep than any of us, but well deserved. Again, I'd like everyone to give a warm welcome and thank you to Mr. Dennis Banks. Good night.
I'll sing you a song as you're going out. Thank you.